Welcome, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole here on Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, my co-host is Victoria Mundae. And down in the chat, Alina, moderating the chat. Well, we have a fantastic episode up for you tonight. A real special guest tonight, Chris DiCesare. So you will recognize him from the recent Netflix series, just came out yesterday, True Haunting, in which, this is like really one of the most iconic American hauntings of recent memory. And Chris's book here, that also just came out, Ghost Boy of Erie Hall, of course, highlights the entire case, very, very detailed. So really, really thrilled to have Chris on tonight. And Chris, the show is peaking at #3 right now at Netflix. So congratulations on this.
Thank you very much. It's a wonderful blur.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, who knew, like, all those years ago when this happened to you, which was a very harrowing experience, that you would be here today being able to share this through a really popular medium like Netflix, this particular story. So, really, the first question that I want to ask you about all this, I know we're going to get into some of the details and the minutia, but how do you feel that you sharing this experience is helping others?
Well, that is the goal, right? That
Mhm.
if you do something that is shared with the public that actually serves a purpose and helps or informs. And I think that each one of us, if we look at our lives and assess things, we've had periods of trauma, and they're unique to each of us. But the traumas themselves occur in the same way, where you question your value, your actions, your purposes. And so, whether it's addiction or depression, loss of a loved one, whatever we're working through, we're trying to solve for X in that equation for life. The reason that I'm on Netflix now is because the X I'm solving for, Ghost, is a little more rare and interesting. But all of us have the same equal value in terms of what our worth is, and in terms of how we approach life. And then I'm hoping that when I share my experience, either in person discussions with you here on the podcast or through Netflix, that people see the human side, the real people in those events, and how they bound themselves together like battle buddies against fear and darkness and confusion and judgment. And if we allow ourselves to sleep at night, taste our food, and listen to music, journal things down, all those things will help in any crisis of confidence or constitution. And so I'm hoping that folks can get through their crises, modeling some of the things that I did to get through mine.
Yeah. Yeah, that is absolutely wonderful, because this, going through all the material, and you were very, very kind to have sent me a review copy of the book. And I looked back, it was 2 years ago. It's like, I can't believe it was 2 years ago that that they haven't such, and it kind of shows you how long of a process it was to get this produced and out there. But this was something that it started with you, and then it started affecting your friends and people that you were there at school with. And it's even your father came and experienced a few things. So how was that for you, as an individual who started experiencing these things, and then all of a sudden it branched out to your friends and people that you cared about as well?
Yeah, that was terrifying. If it is just you in the scenario, you have more control over the environment and your actions. When the trauma, the experience, the haunting spreads out like tentacles,
Mhm.
then things are harder to understand, to watch, to observe, to control, to interact with. And after the priest, Father Charles Manning, who was very kind to go to the dorm room and bless it at my request, had done so, uh, the events in my room stopped. The flashing clock,
Yeah.
the breezes, the whispers, the shadows. However, the haunting then spread out from my room to other rooms in the dormitory and the campus, affecting other people that I knew in a very bad, bad way. So there's that term that keep things close to your chest.
Mhm.
right? Either keep things
Yeah.
inward so you can see what's happening, or keep your friends closer, enemies closer. The idea is that if you can see, feel, hear, touch things around you, you're better aware of your environment and can act within that environment. When things expand beyond what you can do or see or understand, you've lost control of the situation, which can be dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, it was there any moment though within there, and I know it had to be horrifying for you to see this happen to your friends, but you were going through, you know, you're there at college, you're away from home, it's early in the school year, and as these things started happening to you, it got let known that you're experiencing something, and
Right.
you're going through on top of all the aspects of the haunting, which were terrifying. Now you also have people calling you the ghost boy and kind of ridiculing you. It's almost like a form of bullying, really. And so, was there any like maybe sense of validation in there? Like, see, guys, I was right, but oh my gosh, I don't want it to happen to you.
I suppose if I was investigating, that would have been great to have that validation, because then the response to what I was doing would have been appropriate and
Mhm.
hoped for. As I was trying to survive
Yeah,
and flee from the moment, the concept of the ghost boy just pulled me back into the situation that I wanted to get out of, because now people defined me by it. I went from being looked at as a successful uh, and popular runner and athlete to
mhm.
some type of circus freak, some type of curiosity. And the interesting thing about that was they weren't wrong. Things were frightening. I was failing my classes. I wasn't running like I was, and I
Yeah,
didn't know what was happening. Still, we want the right to reserve how we present ourselves, especially in the era now of pronouns and things like that. Back in the day, you had jocks, stoners, geeks,
right.
brains,
Yeah,
nerds. We weren't really that, but we pretended to be those. That's what we wanted to feel like with others. But when that facade is stripped away and others around you all claim that you are something, your lone voice doesn't equal the 55 around you. And their opinion of you, whether faulty or correct, becomes the reality in society. So, against my will, I became the ghost boy. And as you mentioned, it was a hard thing. And it wasn't quite like you have for the Holocaust with the triangles, the stars, but it's a similar concept where you are judged, you are labeled, and you're pushed aside. That's
mhm.
that's that's what it felt to me in that moment. It took me many years, maybe 30 years, to come to grips with the fact that whether or not I liked it, that's how people viewed me, as the ghost boy. And if I was going to at any point in time move beyond it or embrace it, I'd have to embrace that view of me, because that's how they
Yeah,
saw me. I remember Leonard Nimoy, the actor from Star Trek, Mr. Spock, live long and prosper. He wrote a book, I Am Not Spock. And the
yeah,
outcry was so negative. And yes, you could, because to us, he was. For him, it was a acting role like Mission Impossible, and that's incredible. But to him, no. And then when he realized how much this character, what he put his heart into, meant to so many people, wrote a second book saying, I am Spock. I get it now,
mhm.
because that's just what I want. And so watching him do that on a much smaller scale, I then began to say, fine, if you want to call me that, that's okay, because that's how they see me.
It's kind of interesting. You use Leonard Nimoy and the Spock character there. It reminds me of and this is a total aside, but Mark Hamill was doing some Broadway, and in his bio within the pamphlet, the bill, he didn't list his credits for Star Wars. And I guess Carrie Fisher went to go see him, and she asked him, why are you not mentioning that? She's like, well, it's not really a Broadway thing. That's more the film. She's like, look, you're just going to have to accept you're Luke
Right.
Skywalker. I'm Princess Leia. That's the
Yeah.
way people see us.
And
So,
they're loved that way too. People love
yeah,
that concept, and it makes them happy. So they're, again, I mean, I can be selfish and say, don't call me that. I'm not a kid
right.
anymore either. But people identify with that. And if it
Mhm.
allows for communication, identification, and shared ideas, fine by me.
Yeah. So, and it seems like you have embraced it because you've just published the book, The Ghost Boy of Erie Hall,
That's right.
and very very detailed on everything about this particular case. And I guess I want to ask you is, how was it for you writing this book, and by the way, those who are watching and listening later, I do have the link to purchase the book down there in the description. How was it for you writing this book and reliving those moments?
Yes, that's spot on, because if you're writing something, you're thinking it. If you're thinking it, you're
Mhm.
feeling it. So that very process, people think that's just paper, just, pen to paper. It's not. It's you're going back into your experiences, your psychosis. And so I would play 80s music that I liked in the process. So as the frightening events would roll from my brain to out and through my fingers, into my ears came the relaxing, soothing, fun memories. That's why I balanced out the process. Without the music, I couldn't have done that. Anybody who's worked through trauma, it affects actually how you think, not just what you think. And there's a process whereby emotion becomes logical. So, for example, I can say to you, well, that's happened 38 years ago, 40 years ago. You've had how many thousands of nights of that happening again? It's gone. But in the back of the mind, the thought says, it happened once, right? So therefore, it can happen again. And as low as the odds might be, that happening, that 1% chance still could happen mathematically. And if it does, my life is turned upside down
Yeah.
all over again. So the music would help to soothe me on that. There is a bit of catharsis too, the concept that I held all these thoughts and experiences inside.
Yeah.
And I wondered for many years, it must have meant something, right? It just seemed to me it was beyond me, that people would find meaningless, but what? So I'd cross the street very carefully so I wouldn't get hit by a car in case I lost the knowledge. And
Yeah.
now to have the book out there and the Netflix show out there, in a way, I'm relieved of the pastoral care of this. It can go beyond me now. So at some point in time, I can close my eyes and find, hopefully, be positive rest and know that I did my job in carrying forth these events and the people in them, and hopefully in a positive way.
And does it give you like a sense of some more closure here? I mean, it's so many years after the fact, but and it seems like when you were there, you did have you were able to basically help this entity in a sort of way, and you had, and I love this photo that Jeff took of you. You're free of this thing now. But all these years later, with, because it had to be kind of lingering kind of back behind the scenes, does that just give you closure on all this now, even though you're kind of in the middle of it with the
Yeah,
whole Netflix thing?
it's interesting. I don't know if I think differently the same as their people. For me, closure is found when someone else finds their closure. It's an odd
Mhm.
thought that I have, but and I'll give you two quick examples. The first thing is that when I had my children, they'd be the children of the ghost boy. And I had the
Mhm.
opportunity perhaps to raise them with this understanding and this fear. I don't want to do that. At the same time, I was totally naive and ignorant. I don't want that either. So I would tell my children nighttime stories with frogs and deer and castles and mountains and
Yeah.
dinosaurs. And within these little parables were my experiences. They could actually learn to think through the crises without having to be burdened by the history of what had happened. And when my children saw me on TV the first time, they said, wait, seriously? So I needed that closure because then I knew I could parent somewhat successfully. I could go beyond my needs. So as a
Mhm.
parent, that was the closure I needed. My kids could get through that safely. But then there's also the concept of the people I was with. Was Linda okay after all these years? Was Jeff okay? Was Beth? Were these people
Yeah.
okay? Because I was the primary focus. They turned to me for guidance and for help. And the biggest closure for me, it occurred in 2015 when we had a 30th anniversary of the haunting of symposium, and they got us together, all of us together in a room, and for the first time we spoke about it, what we
Yeah.
saw, how we saw it, and we made it through. And I thought, wow, we survived. So the closure that way is there. The closure has been established, but the relief of not being one of the principal carriers, proponents of the message,
Mhm.
phew, now I can live
Nice.
my life without fear. I know it might sound kind of strange or maybe counterintuitive, but that's how it's worked in my mind over the years.
Yeah,
Okay, I
it
have a
makes.
quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Victoria.
Sorry. A lot of time, well, not a lot of time, all the time, trauma is stored within your body, whether you realize it or not. Did you have any sort of, and don't get too personal, any sort of health issues after this? And if so, did writing the book help release the trauma?
I had this
You know what
bad
I mean?
rash. No, just kidding, just kidding.
Was calculus involved?
I agree with you 100%. In fact, during the haunting itself, I couldn't run. Before the haunting, I'd run 9 marathons, 42 kilometers when I got to college. And within a few weeks of that haunting occurring, I couldn't go more than 200 yards, 200 meters without like my legs wobbling under me. It just ate me up. And I think anger does that. I think fear does that. I think trauma does that. All those things is why people talk about trying to live or have daily routines that reduce the trauma.
That would make sense. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Like you couldn't psychologically, you could not run away from this. So that would make sense why you couldn't run.
I remember telling Jeff, who lived next door to me in the room, who would chronicle these things. I said, what's interesting? No matter how fast you run, no matter how strong you are, no matter how smart you are, if you can't understand your environment, you can't function in it. And when that happens, it builds a stress in you. The stressors, they're called. And the stress makes you sick. You can't sleep as well. You can't absorb your food as well. And so it's like this holistic thing. So yeah, my dad came to visit me and he said to me, my God, what happened to you? I've lost like 15, 20 pounds in like 3 weeks. And I remember he told my mom, that's not the Chris that I know. Who is this person there? And even when I put the weight back on, when things ended, my mother said to me, you look the same again now, but you're a different person on the inside. So trauma works in very quiet ways, very subtle ways. And as you mentioned, trauma may never go away because the traumatic experience changes how you think. Rewrites thought through the neurons. And then when you dwell on those thoughts, it creates more pathways and it reinforces those thoughts. So other things go to that. So my heart goes out to folks who are working through that process, even things that are biomechanical or inherited, such as like things like dyslexia. The student's told, well, you're stupid, you're not trying. No, they are trying harder than you're trying. It's not functioning a way they can express what they're seeing and reading. And remember, I was lying on the floor of this bathroom thinking I was dead, thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I can't communicate effectively. And that moment, I think, has made me a better teacher because now I'm slower to judge and quicker to listen. I have a more open experiential base to pull from to say, wait, he's not angry because of things that I'm saying to him, or people are saying he's angry because he's feeling himself. He feels he feels he can't do it. There's no confidence there. So if I can teach him or her to read, to problem solve, to socialize, and give them the tools, help them build the tools to move ahead, that's the real teaching job.
Do you think this experience happened to you as like a catalyst to change the direction of your life, if it did, so you could help others? Or are you still on whatever you majored in, or did you continue on in that relationship?
I can rationalize that. That's a good rationalization. I wish it never had happened. I truly believed I was dead in that time period, would not make it through. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone. However, having survived this through luck, friendship, faith, whatever you're going to put in there, I made it through. And I wonder sometimes about the concepts on this spectrum of free will. Sometimes you look and say, that's meant to be. Things go in threes, love at first sight. It just fits with the cosmic consciousness. It seems to fit within a paradigm that you can understand mathematically, scientifically. Other times, the fruitful boy gets cancer and dies. It's just interesting how, and I look for sometimes, where is the balance? Where should I place myself between chaos and control? At what point in time? And when you go through a crisis with the paranormal, you ask yourself brand new questions that someone who hasn't been there wouldn't ask. For example, in the Christian faith, for example, the faith is basically defined as believing without seeing. There is no proof, but I believe this is the case, much like love, right? You believe that it's will work out and you hope it's true. I don't have faith because I've seen what lies after death. I don't have to believe in that. What does that mean then in terms of me as a spiritual being, in terms of me as a communicator, as a human being? I'm devoid of faith because I've seen. It's more than belief. So those are the kind of questions you ask while the wind is swirling around you and books are flying around and people are running out of the room and you're freezing cold thinking you're going to die because you're no longer thinking about paper or plastic.
Would you consider yourself a light worker then?
I don't think that I'm that talented or focused. I think I have the capability to do something like that if given the opportunity. But I've also seen how if you're not ready for that type of vocation, it can backfire on you. When I was very young, maybe 1920, I was exhibiting some of those things. I was able to sense people's illnesses. I was able to predict certain things. I could read auras. I was doing workshops. It was an amazing thing. I could do bibliomancy, where you could take a yearbook.
Yeah.
And if the person was Protestant, that they had a sharp personality, I could, they're, oh my God, I just sensed things. I don't know where it came from, but it led to this hysteria. Oh, well, oh my gosh, that means you're special. That means you're divine. Or you're the devil, you're possessed. And the effect on my life was damning. Knock, knock, knock. Hello? If you're Jesus, who am I? Knock, knock, knock. The devil's inside of you. At that point in time, it was the occult. There was no Ghost Adventures or no shows like you have nowadays to educate you. And so I was chased away from the paranormal by this horrifying experience, although a very valuable one. And I was chased away from light work and things like that because people could not see me for who I was, as what they wanted me to be. And as a young teenager, young person, I didn't have the skill sets or tools to push back against that. I have people say, you should have said things 40 years ago. No, I'd have gone to Hollywood and got chewed up. Yeah, I can see the thing, you know, the ghost boy bears his soul. That's not all. I can just see that's what happens, right? And so I'm actually thankful that I gave myself the opportunity to grow and to learn. So it's like the ragged version now, the broken down version, but it's wizened, you know, and it's a caring version of me. So hopefully it's good enough.
Oh,
That was very good.
yes.
Well, do you think, I mean, it was really, really fascinating, of course, the eventual connection that was made to your family,
Yeah.
which I found absolutely fascinating. So do you think that your presence there, and, you know, they say that a lot of people that do have, you know, some of these gifts, and I believe you obviously do, that, you know, the kind of to the spiritual world, you appear as a beacon. Well, you know, here you are on campus as this beacon. And oh, by the way, there's this connection back to your family because it was on your mother's side, I guess great grandfather somewhere down the line, had found the body.
Yes.
So was that, what do you think of that?
I can't disagree with that. Hindsight can be 20/20, right? If we allow it to be and do our due diligence. At the time of the haunting, as a 19-year-old running back and forth screaming and throwing to the wall, my impression was this thing was evil. It was vicious. It wanted to hurt me or control me. And I was being punished for something I didn't know I did or didn't do. I despised it. But as the years went by, and actually going back further, as the haunting went on, I began to sense pain and sorrow in this thing. And so it kind of softened my approach. I thought, you know, sometimes a dog or a cat, a beloved part of your family, one of your kids basically, if they're hurt or frightened, they can snap at you, scratch you, they still love you. And I began to see things a bit differently, different lens, and that, okay, well, this thing knows I can see it, and it knows that I can hear it. Maybe I'm the first person in who knows how long that can do this. Maybe he feels I can help him in some way. And what do? I throw things at him. I get the room blessed. I keep pushing him away. I think that might have frustrated him. I think it might have lost some concentration. Like, what are you doing? It's almost as though someone's drowning.
Yeah. Do you think that's why he went after your friends?
I think there's my friends, because if the room was blessed, he could get to me. I'm safe. If it hurts my friends, what do? I help my friends. It was brilliant tactically speaking. Whatever this thing was, it could outthink me from day one. And so I said, oh my gosh, I have to help my friends. It knows that. So it attacks Beth, it attacks Linda, it attacks all these. And guess what?
Yeah.
I go to it. Brilliant, frightening, but brilliant. And the whole aspect of the familial connection going back, and the idea of generations and those things, we didn't discover this until 27 years later. So for all that time, I assumed it was somebody maybe who had submitted to pressure and maybe hung themselves to their own lives or some type of thing like that. And then the bombshell came out through genealogy and lineage, and my family worked on some of that, and Pace State University worked on some of that. There was a young soldier named Thomas Boyd who was captured by Native Americans and tortured and killed, and then decapitated, horrible, horrible things, and left there to die. I would run by the tree that he was killed on almost every day, 220 years later. We've discovered that my mother's side of the family, last name Hubley, about 6 generations back, her uncle and grandfather found this person's body and buried it.
Yeah.
So perhaps it recognized the genetic component, or perhaps it recognized. I didn't think about ghosts. I wasn't into ghosts. I didn't really believe ghosts were there, so I didn't do much analysis ahead of time. But looking back, some of that stuff was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it could have been some sort of recognition of similar type energy or something to that effect. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
People sometimes think that Ed and Lorraine Warren had a role in this, and they came to the college to talk. I listened to them. And it's possible they might have said some things that allowed my mind to consider possibilities. Because 11 days after that, that's when things began to occur in the dorm, all the sounds and the full-bodied apparitions, things like that. And so I tell people it began on February 11th, but I don't know if it's true. It could have happened to me before that. I just wasn't paying attention. I wasn't aware of the possibility of that. So again, it's what you don't know. You just don't know that you don't know.
Right. So, yeah, Ed and Lorraine show up, and so it seems like that was especially at that time, a really fascinating topic, because they were doing the circuits, and it was basically them and Hans Holzer, and that's all you had back then. Right. Yeah, because a very, very different world. I think a lot of people, especially the younger generation, and not trying to insult the younger generation or anything like that. It's a very, very different world, because today we have all the television shows and things like that have been around for like 25 years now. And so it's kind of been within our lives, which is in one sense great, because now it's a more open topic. People are able to really freely discuss it. And I think it's allowed people to realize, oh, other people are having these experiences too. I let me talk about my experience, but back then you didn't have that at all. And so, Ed and Lorraine coming there had to be, just really, really, I don't know, shocking, enlightening, surprising. What were you thinking about their presentation that you actually got to attend?
It's as you mentioned, Mike, time passes and different generational things ebb and flow, and cultural fads and whatnot. At the time, we couldn't have known the role they would have played historically in the field, whether mythologicalized or not. They were pioneers in the field. They took the slings and arrows. I know that people will debate all their cases and their value. For me, they were very helpful because they presented, and I can say this is what I can say definitively. When Lorraine Warren spoke to you, she meant what she said. She could be wrong, but when she spoke to you, that's what she believed. And when you're speaking with anybody and they're talking from the heart, it makes it easier to take it in and to listen and be a part of that conversation. I had no doubt that she believed what she was saying. And Ed was a very effective communicator, almost like I know he's almost negative, but a carnival barker, like an MC. He had a great pacing, a great cadence, a great flow, and it was a great show. Star Trek, a great show. Stranger Things, a great show. Not real, but great entertainment. I went there because Jeff said to me, it's free. Or would you go? And that's the truth. But when I got there, this is a great show. They had these slides. They still, if you're a young person, it's a still image with no sound. You get to control
the carousel that the slides were in. Yep.
That's what it was. And the pictures were purportedly images of ghosts or spirits or things like that. Were they? I don't know, but they were compelling. And then they had these things that they called EVPs, which I found out later on was electronic voice phenomena. And there were these sounds, and I have to say they sounded off. They didn't sound right. Could have been a goat that was sick. I don't know. But again, it was credible enough in terms of presentation and experience to say, this is interesting. I'll give it a thought, and maybe there is something, and that's cool. Got my money's worth from that, and that was cool. And Lorraine was elegant. She just like the 40s. She had the straight back and the hair up and the gown, and she had a presence, and I constantly say this, and it's the best analogy I have. They were like the Colonel Parker and Elvis of the paranormal. There was something, and people now talk about them either as destructive forces or icons in the field.
Yeah.
Whatever you think of them, that's how powerful they are in that spectrum. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Beautiful. And so, not having things we have today, I think, was both helpful and hurtful. The concept that we have today of hundreds of groups, tons of podcasts, hundreds of shows. I remember the first time I got in television, it wasn't to do investigation, it was to actually share my experience. But I began to meet folks who did the TV shows, who went on investigations. And it became clear to me right away that it was high in entertainment value, but low in actual data or verifiable activity.
Right.
And so I'm never a bad person, you can tell. I went to one of the stars. I said, let me ask you a question. I'm troubled, and maybe you can help with this. And I asked, if it is true that sometimes people kick the walls or make these things happen or do things over and over again, does that bother you that you're not giving the audience a real experience? I said just like that. I'm just curious how you feel about that. And he said to me, you know what? Listen, what you're saying is true. Most of the time we have to create the situations, create the sounds, create the things. On occasion, there is something. And the problem is we can't investigate because we have to go to the next place 2 weeks from now. We just can't stay. But I'll tell you what he said to me. I'll never forget this. We share locations that can be preserved and studied, terminology we can use in the field, safe methods of investigation. We raise awareness. People don't feel alone anymore. I thought, you know what? Interesting. I never considered that they're actually serving a function beyond the ghost validity. And it's true. Right. And those shows set the foundations for what we have now as modern research and ghost hunting.
Yeah, that's exactly what I always tell people, pretty much the exact same thing, or at least pretty close, that take what you want from the actual investigative aspect of it, but the fact that it has allowed us to have this conversation more freely and open and allow people to realize that others are having these experiences, it has created a culture today in which we are more freely able to talk about this. Because years ago, if you were talking about it, in your case, you're ridiculed as the ghost boy. Others were, either ridiculed by their family. Some, it used to be, oh, you're going crazy, you're going to be put in the straitjacket and get sent away. So it's created a whole different culture. Say what you will about the actual investigative part of it.
Right. Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You mentioned, Jeff brought you there to go see Ed and Lorraine Warren, and Jeff was a photographer. So what did you think of his photos? He had some interesting ones that were taken throughout this, and we'll share a few here. Hey, there you are.
That's Valentine's Day, 1985. It's about 8:30. That's the poster for the Netflix show, and that's same night.
That's the same night, yeah. And you were actually feeling something cold.
Yeah, Jeff wanted to get some type of evidentiary or proof, something to show ourselves and others that this wasn't some charade. I knew I was seeing things. He believed that I was seeing things and saw things extraneously around. He didn't see the ghost, but he saw that things around the ghost move. So he wouldn't feel the ghost, but he'd see the temperature drop. So he was indirectly experiencing what I was saying was occurring, and that was enough for him to invest in the process. And he wanted to get more. And I'll never forget this. We were talking about having the priest, Father Manning, come to bless or exercise, whatever the word was back then, the room. And that might lead to the ghost being gone, which is my goal. But so before that happens, just so we have some, let's go in there and do this investigation. So my friends are having dates and Valentine's and dancing and having fun, relax. Don't. I'm in this cold room with my friend with the camera looking for dead things. So it was not a cool thing. And I remember he said to me, he'd seen, I believe it was in search of perhaps a method whereby if you put your hands in front of you, like straight out, you could possibly feel for temperature variations, cold areas in the room, cold spots. And that could indicate a place where a ghost was, because the theory was they would drain energy from the area. Additionally, when we had activity, the room would get so cold, you think the window was open, you see your breath, but the heat was on. It made no sense. My father experienced that. So bizarre things would happen. So he asked me to call for someone, the ghost, and I didn't know how to do that. So that was the method I used. And as this was happening, and he was adjusting his flash cube on his camera and getting things ready and his thermometers.
Flash cubes, yeah. People today don't realize the flash cubes.
Right.
Like, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's I feel like we're like
you had to buy those in packs. Remember?
Right, that's correct. We're like 1830s. You're a real go-getter, you know. We're bridging centuries, generations. But yeah, and so the closet door unlatches and opens. I thought to myself, wait a second. I'm doing this to make him happy. Let's do this a couple seconds. We go home. No harm, no foul. Let's have a hamburger. The door opens up, and I see the thing in the closet. I'm like, oh no. And so, of course, what do? I tell him, I can't. I am so petrified. For the first time in my life, I cannot speak. I'm like, and it's so cruel. He wants to see it. I don't. I see it.
Right.
He doesn't. That is not funny. So I was able to finally get out like a sound. You know, it's like post Taco Bell, and that got his attention. How gross, right? That got his attention.
I used to work at Taco Bell when I was a kid, just a few years after your incident there. Yeah.
And then stupid ghost boy. And then anyway, so he turns and he sees, and my sweatshirt is blowing back. The cardboard is bending. There's like the wind is flying through the room. And I said to him, "Take the picture. Take the picture." And that's where that picture came from. Boom. And then a few minutes, it actually came right through me. The thing went right through me. It felt like all the cells in my body froze. And then unfroze, and then I said, "I'm out. I'm not coming back to this room." And he said, "Please, where is it?" And then before I left it, above my bed, where, Jeff, the dead person looking at us, that's the ghost. Where the dead guy looking at us is the ghost. He goes, "I don't see him." Like, how can you not see that? He's right there. Look. And so he said to me, brilliant move. If you can see him, you take my camera, you get the picture. I said, one. I took his camera, kind of lined it up a little bit, you know, and hit the button, ran. Yeah. And then we had to send them away and things like that back in the day. And when the photos came back, that image of the skeleton, the human body where I pointed to was right there.
So that image,
the spine, the rib cage, the sternum, that sent people into a craze. And Jeff promised me he would show it to nobody. Well, let's be fair. If you have that, you probably show it to people.
You're showing everybody, yeah.
People say, "I'm pregnant," tell nobody, and by the next day, 18 people know. Right? That's just how it is. It's so exciting. I had to share. It's good news, and so that was a tough thing because that ultimately led to the whole ghost boy phenomenon. And I said in the show, I love Jeff. He's my best buddy. Will always be my best buddy. That was probably a mistake, but I understand why it was made. I made mistakes too, so I don't want to judge him too harshly. We were 19 years old. He was trying to expand knowledge, look for answers. So looking back,
he was excited, and
I was in my fields, as they say nowadays. So probably he was correct, but in the moment, you might not see eye to eye. So that's how that transpired.
Mm-hmm. Victoria, looks like you have a question or two there. So I've been talking a lot. So
I think you and I are very close in age. 27, right? Because I went.
Yes.
I'll be 28 in 2 weeks. So, you know, there you go.
What is that?
28.
Wait, Libra. Is that Libra? I don't know.
Yes. I'm a Libra. I'm a Libra with an Aquarius rising and a Leo descending. So watch out.
That's bad, right?
That's bad. That means I'll smile, but if I get pissed, I'll kick your ass. Just kidding. But that's what that really means.
Do not make her mad. Oh, yeah, we're good.
No, I never get mad. But anyway, like you, I agree. There was nobody you could talk to at that time because I went to college in the 80s. I've been having experiences since I was 2, but I have cultivated a group of friends that we could talk to each other about these kind of things. But everybody else, you can't talk to these because they will lock you up and throw you away, like Mike was saying. But the year before you had your experience, Ghostbusters came out. And since there were no other paranormal shows around, do you think that might have jaded your interpretation of what was actually happening? And then when you got the priest there, then no pun intended, all hell broke loose. You know, or maybe there's a pun there. Because that's, I mean, in Ghostbusters, everything was evil. It was a demon. There was no happy little spirits and ghosts.
Oh, come on. Slimer was cute.
That's
Ew. It was nasty.
At the risk of sounding contrarian and at the risk of making half of the paranormal community hate me or despise me, I did not like the movie. I thought it was silly, unnecessary. a waste of time. I loved the song. When we got to our rooms in the fall of '84, we had this ridiculous Ghostbusters logos on the door. I'm like, what is that? But it's almost like a foreshadowing, like in the novel, in the movies. Like, and of course, where do I go to? Erie Hall. I mean, looking back,
Right.
it's by someone out in Hollywood, you know? Okay,
Yeah.
go to the door,
Yeah.
gets there. Erie Hall, like scary. But I will tell you with an honest heart and mind, I had no thought of any of that. I wanted to run. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to dance. I wanted to explore life. I wanted to learn. I didn't go in there like playing with Ouija boards, the outcast in the basement, looking for answers. It was
well, none of us
totally
did.
opposite. But yes, I think that culturally you can overestimate the value or effect that that movie had on people, especially young people, because young people take things, even if they're fictional, as factual. My son was about 4 years old. He was in the living room watching a cartoon. And I walked out and he was taking his head and he's like, "Mm, mm." So I said to him, Matthew, what are you doing? He goes, I'm trying to take my head off. I said, why do you want to do that? He goes, on the cartoon, they did that. I said, Matt, that's not real. If you do that now in real life, you will die. You know, so, what? So,
don't do that.
I think it made it fun, Ghostbusters, because it's a Slimer. It's fun. There's comedy in that. It once again, just like the shows, I didn't appreciate it. It did allow for conversation and discussion. It made it less the occult, more entertainment. So I think it helped the field and people in general discuss these things, just like Close Encounters did with UFOs and UAPs later on. You know.
Okay. I have to admit, I'm so sorry. I'm not familiar with your story and what happened because it happened outside of Texas.
There was a bowl of porridge, almost too hot, almost too.
That's why I said she was kind of coming into this blind. So, which is interesting because she kind of has a outside perspective on it because she's always not familiar with it. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to discuss with you is because I was always considered the weird girl, and I had my own little subset group. That made me stand on my own authenticity. And I think it made me stronger in the long run, which I'm just now discovering. And I just lost my question. Oh, what happened in the shower? Yeah. I don't know your story. If you don't want to talk about it, that's totally fine. But I heard that there was something that happened in the shower.
No, he said we just couldn't talk about calculus.
Contact lawyer about
maybe
the shower story. Oh, that shower story. Got it. Okay. Yes.
Maybe he was doing calculus in the shower. That's why I asked, is there anything I couldn't ask?
Right now.
Wait, let me bring up the Chris in the shower photos. No.
Wow.
No? Never get that money. After the priest had blessed the room, and it worked. It was successful. The room was no longer active. But you can't have a priest bless 65 rooms. It's not functional.
Right.
You can't keep doing religious ceremonies on public property. You're just not going to happen. So I realized that, okay, that worked, but then the situation changed. And so we had to figure out how to get the rest of the activity stopped. The ghost, as I mentioned before, began to target my friends to bring me to them.
Right.
Well, that wasn't working because I still wouldn't talk to it. So what happens? I ran for a 9-mile run, which then was easy. Now I go to the mailbox. I can't breathe. And I get back. I'm in the shower. Like, it makes sense, right? Clean up. I'm taking my shower, and the bathroom is small. There's one shower stall. There are 2 sinks with mirrors above them to brush your hair and your teeth. And then there's a toilet right there. And there's a huge, heavy wooden door on a sliding metal rail. So it's like... You cannot escape with any noise ever, and it rattles and things. So
right.
I looked up and I saw the shadow on the ceiling. It looked like the ghost with the tilted head and things like that. And so I think my friends are out there. I went into the bathroom. There's no one there. I looked up and I still saw it. I thought, wait a second. The light source is above me. My shadow is by my feet off the right. There's no way there can be a shadow there because there's no light source below it. Uh-oh, it's the ghost. Think quick. Number 1, turn the water off in the shower. There's no flood that way. Number 2, call the priest, call somebody. So I went back in the shower to turn the shower off. The little Boy Scout, no flood, right? As I turned the lever, it felt as though I was stabbed in the back with a cleaver or a meat knife, a steak knife. And I say that because when you prepare salads and things like that or for food, you might get a cut with a knife. It happens sometimes. It's a clean cut. At first, there is no pain, but in a few minutes, there will be pain, right? So it felt like that, like a clean cut. And it hit me so hard, I lifted off my feet. My face hit the side of the shower wall, and I could taste the cleanser I used to clean the wall, very bitter. In the movies, they go, oh no, my ankle got sprained, and they get killed. There's no way. Are you an Aquarius? My dad always told me, never start a fight, always finish the fight. So I'm being attacked. I don't care who it is. I turn, and I was an athlete back then. I turned and I punched as hard as I could punch. I tore the shower curtain off the rail. It flipped to the ground. Nobody. The only thing I heard was the drips of the spigot from the shower going bloop, bloop, having been turned off. And I yelled. I said, who are you? What are you, coward? Show yourself. Nothing. I said, wait a second, my back. If I pull the knife out, will I bleed out? Do I leave it in? So I looked, turned my back to the mirrors to see what the knife was doing there and how deep it was in. There was no knife. There were 3, not 5, 3 scratches going from above my left shoulder blade to almost my right hip. And I thought to myself, that kid's in trouble. I feel bad for him. There's a moment of separation from the moment, like watching a movie. And I said to myself, this is horrible. I'm going to die. And my mother had left college to have me, give up everything to have me, never resented it, always helped me. I thought to myself, my mother who gave everything will now lose her son. He's 19. All I can do now is have a calm face for the casket, and I make her an alarm. So when I die, I'll make a calm face, so she'll believe I found some rest and peace when she sees me. That's all I can do for her. And I fell to the ground, and that's when my brain kicked in, because there was almost no other stimulus or response. Science. On my wrist, there was a small pear-shaped bead of water. I don't have no towel at the time, so just hang up my wrist from the shower. And in that droplet of water, I could see the room upside down, reflected, inverted. I thought, that's right, because water refracts light. Like that happens in water. Light is refracted, it's bent. That's science. Cool. Then it dropped. And at first I was a little sad, kind of like Wilson, that movie Wilson with Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, wait a second. If it drops, that's gravity, 9.8 feet per second. So we have refraction, we have gravity. I looked down with my eyes, so I couldn't move my body, and in the grout from the tile, it was darkened, moisture. Refraction, gravity, moisture absorption. And I knew in that moment that science was working. Why wasn't I? What is happening? And
Right.
I was ready to die. And luckily at that moment, Jeff heard me scream. He came in, he picked me up, he covered me over, he brought me in the room, and Ed was there and Beth was there. We're going into the hospital. I won't go to the hospital. I think I'm crazy or self-harming. It was a crazy scene. And you've seen the interventions before, right? Interventions, you feel bad for somebody. I was the one, and I knew it. They're all saying, come on, go to the hospital. I can't. They'll think I'm self-harming. They'll restrain me.
Right.
They'll sedate me, and the thing will find me. So we made a compromise. What I think to do, because my reality didn't match their reality. So we got cotton swabs, peroxide, and bandages. So, bandage up and on my back, just tons of bandages. I couldn't wear a shirt to tear the bandages off. See, little things like that, little facts like that, those details tell you what someone went through, rather than saying, "Oh, that was fine," because the movies are scripted. Life is not.
Right.
Truth. Well, did you ever think that, okay, now that you've encountered your ghost person, that you have opened yourself up and that really wasn't a ghost, but that was a shadow person you were seeing up on the roof ceiling?
I would never think that. I didn't know what that was. I had no terminology. I had no understanding. I knew Casper. I knew Jesus, and that was my ghost I had in my life. I had no basis for comparison. All I knew is I didn't like this. I wanted to stop. And when Jeff got the photographs, you know what I told him? I said, burn them, destroy them. Because to me, it's as though I was mugged in a street corner. I don't want to see that street corner again. I want to relive that experience. But I recognize other people who will hear about this. It's important to have something to show them that represents the moment. So luckily, he didn't destroy those things, and they're there. It's kind of like this. Yeah. I can make a quick analogy. Suppose you think your partner is unfaithful. You can pay someone to follow them to see where they're going. Maybe they're going bowling. Maybe they're doing a surprise party for you. But what happens if you pay to learn, and the person comes back a week later and says, here you go, drops a middle folder on your table? What's that? The pictures. pictures that you wanted. They're right there. Wait, so that's the person yeah. Are they with somebody? Is it my bed? Is she happy? Is my friend? I don't know if I'm going to see those pictures. So sometimes in a trauma, you don't want proof. You want to get away, not think about those things. So every piece of evidence that Jeff got, which is very valuable, or my friends, I want to destroy and think about because I wasn't investigating. I was surviving. And it's odd to think that, right?
Yeah.
Well, totally understand though that, I mean, it was such a harrowing experience for you. So you would be more in survival mode. And Jeff seemed to be more like, oh, wow, I'm really fascinated by what's happening with you, but you're going through this trauma. We have a couple questions here out of the chat that I do want to get to. So Alessio Bellata, have you ever had dreams or feelings connected to that event afterward?
Yeah. Yes. A lot. It's during the haunting, I'd have these horrifying nightmares that I'd wake up from screaming in the middle of the night and scaring everybody around me that they seem so real. And then I realized that sometimes you can't tell in those moments when you haven't been eating properly or sleeping properly, or you half asleep. You don't know. It's a scary place to be. And I think the mind at night goes through memories and processes through to see what to keep, what to not to keep, how to process things. I think it's part of a technique of survival and restoration. So yes, I am a little embarrassed to admit, but the truth is that on most nights, if I'm by myself in a room to sleep, the light is on.
Oh, okay.
The light is on. And the Warren said, don't do that, because if you do that, that's more energy for the spirit to absorb and to use against you. But my emotional response is, I still want to see. I still want to see. And so again, it's there's theory and there's application.
Yeah, but I imagine that experience has left some scars, and so that's a result of that.
For sure, they're hidden, but they're there and they're deep.
Yeah. So
okay, I have one more question. Oh, okay. Can I ask real quick?
Okay. This is probably a quick one. So Jacqueline Lara asks, does he still keep in contact with all his classmates?
When the haunting ended, for the most part, we just scattered to the breeze, just scattered to the four corners of the earth. We know how to deal with it, talk with it. It's taken about 30 years for most of us, and maybe 40 years from us, to get together. But when we do get together, it's as though no time has passed. The same personalities, the same relations, the same trust that we had in those moments. Jeff and I have had a long-term, consistent relationship, best man relationship,
nice,
best friend relationship. It's been wonderful working through the film. Please Talk With Me. And just to clarify something too, there's a tendency of people to say that Jeff was just trying to get information, and he was. But when the scratches were on my back, he wanted a picture. I said, please don't. I wanted to make sure that I was a person first. He put the camera down. A picture of scratches on the back. Put the camera down to show me he cared about me.
Good.
And that was one of the best moments of my entire life, knowing that I had value beyond the ghost boy.
Right. Good. Go ahead, Victoria.
Okay, real quick. When you were standing outside and you were taking the picture in front of Erie Hall, did you by any chance look in the bushes to see if there was a second E that fell off the building? That would have been.
That is hilarious. I love that question. It's so apropos. That's what should have been, right? So, oh, there it is. Up too late. It's kind of like I get that foreshadowing, like the movies. Look, it's Erie. All of a sudden, the ground pan down, like, oh, there's a second E, but they don't know, but you do. I love that concept.
Is it a 6 or a 9?
Right. It was named after Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes. So that. But I've always said to people forever, it should have been 2 E's. And I mentioned that to the research crew in London around 2021. And then they're like, bing. And that's why you see 2 E's in the title, because Erie was, in fact, Erie. And that's the hardest sell. People will believe there's a ghost there. All these things happen, but they will not believe it's Erie Hall. That's too much for them.
That really wasn't my question, but I was just curious about that. But let's say someone comes up to you and says, Chris, you won't believe what's going on. And they tell you a story about their experiences. What do you tell them?
I listen because I don't know what they're going to tell me until they tell it to me. And they might just want confirmation. They might want just an ear. They might want some kind of soothing. They might want my advice. I don't know what they want until they tell me. So this is tough at conventions because you might have a lot of 10 people in front of you. You can't spend half an hour working with them on these things. But I always listen. I always make eye contact. I hold their hands. At least they know one thing. In that moment, I care about them and I respect them. And I believe what they believe. And I think it's very important. Then later on, I'll say to them, listen, if you need to call me or talk to me or Facebook me and we do it that way, because let's face it, we're talking about the afterlife, things that you can't see well or heal well.
Mhm.
We can't even function as human beings face to face sometimes on this planet. So when you add in like hearing that as well and seeing that as well, it just complicates things further. So when someone says to me, in the house, Abraham Lincoln, he's just like, what? Just I live with that thing for 100 days nonstop. And there's still questions I have about what it wanted, what it said. So there are people who are very gifted psychics and mediums, and I admire them. But it's not like on TV where someone walks in and know everything about a person. It's just not that simple. And I'm glad because that was the case. Life wouldn't be fun.
Yeah.
Are
So
they still having? I'm sorry. Are they still having activity there? I mean,
I don't believe so. I don't believe
I knew
so.
what you're going to say.
I don't.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was going to ask, because
Yeah.
after your experience, it seemed like the haunting stopped. That was it. Like there was a resolution there. But, given, of course, now it's on Netflix, so people are, going to be very, very fascinated by, going to perhaps the school or even people that are currently on campus.
Right.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who's like, oh, that sounds fascinating. Let me try to actually, communicate and maybe try to, restart this whole thing, because I imagine some people I've known investigators, really they say they're investigators and they're not really investigating, they're just trying to have a scare, which this was horrifying for you,
right? Or get TikTok likes just to get their hits on Facebook, the notoriety. I tend to use this analogy so it's not a direct pushback on them. And I had some friends after 9/11 who enlisted in the military service. They enlisted to protect democracy, to keep our nation safe. They're patriotic. They were willing to give up their lives to help others. That was the concept.
Yeah.
And they went there. Bodies blowing up, no communication, fear. Look at the bombs on their back. War wasn't like they thought it would be. It's not a movie. Same thing with the paranormal. Be careful what you ask for and seek. There's one thing talking about it, but any human being who's gone through the like I did, like Christopher Lutz, that's Quarantino, or Andrea Parent, will tell you, please be careful. Unfortunately, people often learn the hard way. That's unfortunate, but I still make it part of my mission to say to people, be responsible, be safe.
Good. Yeah. So, we are kind of winding down. So we are going to, those that are watching, we are going to kick over to the after show here in just a moment. Those that are listening to the podcast version of this later, please encourage you to join us every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time for the live show. And, feel free to, of course, drop in your questions. We have, photos and videos throughout, depending on our guest, or if I'm just doing one of my standalones. But do encourage you to join us every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. And for Chris, his book, The Ghost Boy of Erie Hall, I've had the link down in the description, so please go ahead and grab that. You may recognize that somebody did a little review for it. That was me.
Now that guy rocks.
And then, of course, watch the excuse me, the show on Netflix, True Haunting. First 3 episodes of this first season are the Ghost Boy of Erie Hall. So
guilty as charged.
Yeah. Victoria, you have any last questions before we kick over to the after show? Which, of course, we can ask more questions in the after show. So.
You need to call it the Afterlife Show. Star Trek rocks. That's all I can say.
Live long and prosper.
Yes.
All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Chris. I really enjoyed the talk. It's been good to catch up with you because it's been a few years since we've been in the same room together. So
they know this, but you are incredible. You are kind. You are intelligent. You're sympathetic. You're informational. I really respect you, 100%.
Well, you are too kind, my friend. But thank you very much, and please stick around for the after show. So, all right, everybody, that'll do it for this evening. Until next time, if time really exists. I hear Toby there. Yeah.